Welcome to the Autism Grown Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Regan. On this podcast, this is one of our many resources. This is the place where we explore and discuss topics related to adulthood and growing up, as well as share stories, strategies, and resources from people in our autism community. In today's episode, we're doing things a little bit differently. I wanted to come at the start of the podcast and just say a few words about some updates, some things coming up on the horizon from Autism Grown Up, and to just share some things that I've been really excited about, and I know many other people in our community are also excited about. Switch things up a little bit. Let's see if we like this format. If we don't, we'll go back to what we were previously doing with the regular intro and then jumping into the show. But this is also such a great way to document Autism Grown Up's growth because we are still a relatively newer organization. We're doing things that are very different from other nonprofits, much less organizations doing work in autism. So it will be interesting to look back on these episodes and see where we were with things. And I also want to be able to share a little bit more about my family and what we are navigating maybe we can talk about this on a week-to-week basis, because I see them fairly regularly. I do respite with them every other week. We FaceTime each other all the time, and I want to share some things that we are working on, some of our challenges, some of the things that we wish we had more in place, and hopefully that can help you all too in some form or fashion, just to get to know me or get ideas. I also probably will be posing questions to get ideas too, because there are some things that we are in brand new territory with, and a lot of you all, my hive mind of experts here, have a lot of great ideas. So the first thing I wanted to share is, I just have a few things, is that I attended a North Carolina ABLE training, and this was something provided by another nonprofit in my area called The Collaborative, and their goal is to, on a broader level, find ways to close the wealth gap, and one of those areas is in disability. From what they shared with us, as they've been a huge part of the ABLE accounts here in North Carolina, is that not a lot of people have these accounts, and so they're trying to spread the word, and that's why they had this training. It was like a train the trainer event, so feel sufficiently trained, but I'm always going to be looking at these resources that they provided to us. But I hope to put this in some type of format that is easy for people to access and for people to learn more about. For those of you who don't know about ABLE accounts, because I didn't really know that much about it. Like, I maybe heard about it a couple years ago when it was in the news and it came up as an option. But this is a savings account that an individual with disabilities can open and save money into, kind of like a college savings account. They use that similar tax code for that. And also you could think of it as like a 401k or some other wealth investment accounts that you can put money towards that you can use later on. Trusts were also discussed in this conversation too, but ABLE account seems a lot more accessible and seems like a great option for those who are on SSI and Medicaid and receiving those benefits, but have those financial limits on their accounts to be able to save money and put money towards things that they desperately need related to their disability. For those of you who want to learn more about this information will be coming your way. And I want to look at this as a kind of a nationwide thing. I know I went to the North Carolina ABLE training, but actually we don't have like a residency requirement, so anyone across the country can open an NC ABLE account. Yeah, I'll put some primary or preliminary links in the show notes if you're interested. And just let me know too if you want some specific information related to you. I'd be happy to talk with you about that. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to package this information, get this out there to you all, because this is so incredibly helpful and a great option for the time being when it comes to financial planning and estate planning. And what was really great about attending this training, this was like a 4-hour thing I did on Monday, was I actually saw a couple people that I met through the Autism Grown Up community. It was so great to see them. One of those people in particular is Katrina Hayes. Her Instagram handle is @AutismFitMom. So great to see her there, and maybe we could collaborate on something. She doesn't know that. I just put that out there. Maybe it'll happen. So that was great. It was also awesome to see some big healthcare organizations sending people out to this training so they can be better informed about passing this information along to other members of the community. So overall, really appreciated this event, and I'm grateful that this was an opportunity available to me. The other thing going on this week is I was going to go home to do respite this week, but actually I'm going this upcoming Sunday, which will be really fun. Our respite weekends are really great. I just get to spend a Sunday and a Monday with my brothers and give my parents a quick respite for the day. Something I've also been looking into is something that I learned about in this conversation that you're about to hear in the interview with Dana. She actually works with her brother, who's also an autistic adult, and she works under a different service definition than respite. So I'm looking into that to see how I can do that with my brothers, because I'm doing a lot more than respite. I'm doing a lot more skill building. I'm helping them build their independent skills, their self-care skills when it comes to getting ready for bed and transitioning between activities, especially for my brother Tanner. He's the younger between my two brothers. He's 20. And my mom, she'll do kind of like a daily or every other day report on how different things we've put into place are working. I've made like a lot of visual supports for him. One of his favorite things these days is Shrek, and that's like his favorite thing to look up on his iPad before he transitions to the next activity, and that can slow him down, especially when he needs to get to his bus, his day program bus. There's like no warning when the bus comes. They are at the bottom of the hill and they honk the horn, and away my brothers have to go. There's like a range of time that I'm trying to convince my mom that maybe we can shift off the iPads a little bit earlier. I know that leaves a lot of time for downtime, so we'll have to navigate that, because my brothers, this is their time to be on the iPad before the morning. They had to get up and get ready to go. That can be the toughest time for Tanner, so this iPad time, I totally understand that this is something that she wants to give him the space to enjoy before he leaves, but it is pretty tough when the van's at the bottom of the hill, we have to get ready to go, and he has to search Shrek roaring at a puppy, those exact keywords, and then pull up the image and look at it, show it to everybody, and then start to put it away. So something I did was print out a picture of it, so that way he has it like in the drawer right next to him that he can look at right before he goes. We have like some success with it, but I think he likes to type in the keyword. So just a couple things we're working on, and something that I'll be looking more into in my next visit home is seeing how this works for him and maybe making some adjustments here and there with that. That's just like one key example of one of the major projects I'm kind of putting myself through, that we're putting ourselves all through as we help make mornings a little bit easier for everybody. But yeah, those are kind of the major updates. I'll let you know, I'll know how that goes, and if anything's come up, let me know too if there are any special transition-based things that you've done in the past. We've used timers. Timers work really well with Tanner to a point. We use a timer all throughout the morning, more or less like a countdown all throughout the morning for him to get dressed. So he is a little bit strained with it when it comes to that time to go. But yeah, any other thoughts you all have would be wonderful to hear. We are always, as a family, you all met my dad on a previous episode, but I'm also chatting with my mom and my sister, and we're like brainstorming and also talking to my brothers to see what they like and what they think would be helpful for them. I love being able to do that. So would love to extend you all into this group too. All right. And then now shifting into the episode with Dana Kelsey. I talked with her a few weeks ago. I'm excited for this episode to air. I like to batch a lot of these episodes, so we are ready to go when the time comes, and we have plenty of prep time for passing along final edits of the show and social media images and that type of thing. That's like the student in me. I like to procrastinate sometimes, but I also like to be very much ahead in terms of scheduling. You never know with podcasts how things go. But this episode, we recorded a few weeks ago. Dana was so great in spending her time with us, and she is someone I love following on social media, so I was very excited. I said excited a lot, y'all, but it's so true to have her on this podcast, because she's one of the first people I started following when I first started getting Autism Grown Up out there. And I felt just immediately like a fellowship with her, or like a kindred spirit type of thing. If you all watch Anne with an E, that's like my favorite phrase from her. And that we are both autism siblings. We both have an autistic brother who is an adult, and I feel like they have similar support needs, some similar challenges, some similar interests for sure. Y'all will get to hear a little bit about her brother Rob, who is a major part of her presence online, and they have such a great friendship that reminds me of how close I am with my brothers. You'll all feel that throughout this episode. She works closely with him as like one of his primary caregivers. She has a social media presence with him at autism_IRL, and she also is a BCBA. She has a lot of experience in autism, bringing this into her work today. And then we also get into some major needs when it comes to adulthood services, when it comes to staff. There are a lot of staffing issues, and when it comes to finding someone who is like the perfect fit for your autistic loved one, someone who understands them. Also, there's just a high level of turnover because this position is not paid very well, and there isn't support and training that needs to be put into place. So we go down those topics for sure, and I think this leads us perfectly into thinking about planning out a future episode on this. Let us know if you are interested in hearing more about this, about any of these areas. I think Dana would be very happy to share because we both have been in these roles as staff members and professionals in this field. But don't let me ramble on much longer. We're gonna jump into the episode. Here we go. Welcome to the Autism Grown Up podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dana. So can we first get into a little bit about you and your work in the autism community?
Sure. I am a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, and I've been working professionally in the autism field for the past. Also, am involved in the autism world as I have an older brother, Robert, who is on the spectrum. So I've been knee deep in autism essentially my whole life.
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah. And then you're also sharing a lot about him through this new social media platform, but it's been around for a while though. But your profile hasn't. When did you start on Instagram?
I started on Instagram, oh my gosh, maybe a year and a half ago, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, so it hasn't been super long. I had a personal Instagram account for a while. And then once I moved home about 2.5 years ago to help my parents kind of take over some of the direct care for my brother. Mm-hmm. And it was a few months after I had moved home that I decided to start the Instagram to share Robert with the social media world.
Just like so amazing. I feel like I don't know how many people talk to you about this, but I feel like it's just made a tremendous impact on the autism community and just like showing representation online of what it's like to be an adult on the spectrum.
Thanks. Yeah, that was really kind of my whole goal. Honestly, I did not think we were going to have as many followers as we do. I originally started the account to kind of keep in touch with some of my friends and coworkers and colleagues from Massachusetts and kind of keep them up to date on what I'm doing with Rob and what I was working on with Rob. Yeah. And it just kind of took off from there. And no, it's been great. And I've been able to get in contact with and connect with so many people from like across the globe. I've talked to people from Australia and Italy and England, and it's just, it's crazy. I never thought that it would have as big an impact as it has.
I mean, as of right now, I'm like pulling up your account. Like as of this recording, you're at like 4,132 followers. Like that's wow.
Yeah, that's so crazy. A little micro influencer, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what status level 4,000 qualifies you at. But
no idea.
But that, like, if you've ever been to Disney and been on the like Buzz Lightyear ride and you kind of qualify as, your score range of like what you're labeled as, I feel like Instagram needs one of those.
They do. Yeah, you could have like a little star or a check mark.
Yeah, right.
Definitely. Especially like when people are going online and they're like looking for any type of resources or people to like look to, because I mean, people may look for Autism Speaks or the Autism Society, but like to have like everyday experiences is, and to see
Right.
other people living their lives the way they are and being real about autism is, yeah, it's pretty tough to find.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm glad that I can be there to kind of be one of those accounts and give people a more realistic view, I guess, of what life might be like for an adult on the spectrum.
Right. Yeah, so true. I think also, what was I gonna say? You also you won an award, right, for your account.
I did, yeah, through We Go Health, the advocating for another award, which was very surprising and
Cool.
shocking and kind of seemed to come out of nowhere. But it was nice. It was, it was nice to kind of feel recognized. I think a lot of times as like a caregiver and somebody who is there, providing care so much for someone, you can kind of feel unrecognized and feel a little bit unappreciated. So
Mm.
something like that, really just blew me away. And like I said, it was just so nice to feel recognized for some of the work that I was doing.
It's incredible. I mean, I had no idea about the award, like the award category, and that that could be even a possibility for people. So that's so amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit when you said you went back home to do more direct caregiving with Robert. So do you do,
Hmm.
if you don't mind me asking, that's all good. Do you do respite with him, or is it mostly just you coming in to help here and there?
I right now technically am hired under his self-direction plan as his community habilitation staff, so as his like direct service provider.
Okay.
So I'm in there 40 hours a week working as his staff at the
Oh,
moment.
okay. That's really interesting. That's good to know, especially for just sharing about that, because I think I also do that type of work too, but just on like a respite level with my brother. So that's
Hmm.
really interesting to discover.
Yeah, I would do more of the like respite care when I would come home on vacation and things like that when I was still living out in Massachusetts.
Right.
But moving back to upstate New York, I didn't really know if it was going to be a possibility that I was going to be able to work kind of for him.
Mhm.
I thought maybe if anything, I could do some respite on the side if I had another job, but it just kind of all fell into place and worked out.
Yeah.
Um, and it's been great because, I haven't had to worry about allocating my attention elsewhere. I can just kind of focus on Rob and
Yeah.
where we're headed with him.
That's amazing. And then kind of share that along the way too, via the account too. Um, I also think,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people don't. So he gets it through his services, mostly through like the Medicaid waiver, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We elected to self-direct our funding through the Medicaid waiver services.
So that's not using, yeah, I'm just kind of like, so a lot of people don't know about this at all. So I'd like to get into it whenever I possibly can. Of like when you finally get a slot, you can choose to be self-directed, like your family and my family too. We're self-directed too. Or you can go the agency route where they can hire all of the staff.
We
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and we initially went the agency route. So for quite a few years we were with a local agency, and the problem was we couldn't find appropriate staff. We had these kids coming in who didn't have a lot of experience, and Rob's a big guy and he can get a little loud and a little aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And we just, the turnover rate with the staff was insane. We couldn't keep someone for longer than a few months, or if we did have somebody, they didn't have the right training. Um, so that's why we veered away from the agency directed services and went the self direction route, so we could have a little bit more control over the staff that were coming into the house.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really great point and like a pro tip for sure for like understanding more about like what services could look like on a day-to-day basis.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, and it's hard too. The service piece. I mean, these are things that I still feel like I don't know as much as I should about Medicaid and the Medicaid services. And I think finding resources and learning about them is difficult unless, you know, you could spend hours getting into these government websites or your local, you know, state websites and trying to figure out what's available. So I love that that's kind of your whole niche, that like that's what you want to do is gather these resources and help share them with families, because I think that's one of the hardest things is it's, you know, you reach this point, you reach adulthood and you're like, what is even out there, what is even available, like what are my options?
Mm-hmm.
So it's been tough.
Yeah.
It's been tough.
Yeah. And even with like you feel like you've figured something out and then there's a whole nother level of like, oh actually nope, you actually don't really
Oh
know
my
everything
gosh.
when it comes to this thing, which I'm always discovering with this. I feel like I'm on a Medicaid rabbit hole right now. Especially with like within my
Oh
state.
yeah.
Not to mention like whenever I post anything on Instagram, people are like, out in California it's this thing, or in Chicago it's like this for Illinois. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. um
Yeah, the differences between states are mind-boggling. You
yes.
get into it, you know, and and now I understand why there are families who have like moved states and changed residency in order to access services, because services are so different state to state.
So true. And like my family, now that we finally got off the wait list, my dad's like, we're not going to move this state from the state. So
Yeah.
you and your sister need to figure out where you want to live here.
You're right. Oh, yeah, oh my gosh, the wait lists. Oh,
That's a
what a
whole other
nightmare.
thing. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I was talking with a parent the other day, and my dad happened to be there too. And I realized this other insight of like we had been waiting for so long, and then when they finally told us we had our slots, they were like, "Okay, choose your services. You need to choose them today, or who you're working with today." And my dad was just like, "What?" Um,
Oh my God.
yes. So I also say if you have a chance to get to know the services in your community, please go ahead and do so. Yeah, like the more you know is the more you know.
Yeah, really.
Oh man. Yeah, I also wanted to ask you if you were comfortable sharing about like yours and Rob's experiences with like his day programming and what you all have learned from that. Because I remember hearing on a different podcast episode that I think it was Adventures in Autism. I'll link that if people
Hmm.
want to listen to that episode because it's such a good one.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and I think it's such a tough, challenging, and really sad story, but at the end of the day really highlights like there's such a tremendous need for like autism training and expertise in these settings.
Yeah, yes. So, you know, I'll try to summarize. Definitely link that
Yeah.
podcast episode though, because I go into more detail there.
Yeah, if you could just
But
give us a small
following,
snippet. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so following high school, my parents found a day program in the area for, you know, adults with disabilities, kind of very open-ended, not necessarily autism specific, but something that Robert could go to for a few hours during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I said, it served a whole range of disabilities and a whole age range. And it wasn't an appropriate fit for Rob. The staff in the program didn't understand autism. I don't think they had ever worked with someone who didn't have vocal abilities, and couldn't communicate their wants and needs. And unfortunately for us, Robert was involved in a traumatic incident in the community with one of the staff members. One of the staff members ended up essentially assaulting Robert in the community due to frustration over Robert's, you know, lack of ability to explain why he was upset.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, and Amber put his hands on Robert, and like I said, in a way that caused him trauma a few years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we saw an exacerbation in his obsessive compulsive behaviors, and he would engage in these very intense rituals for hours and hours and hours upon end. And even getting him out into the community, because the incident happened in the community,
Yeah.
Robert built up all of these rituals surrounding community outings and in the community, um, you know, as a way to kind of help him cope with what happened.
Yeah.
Um, So it was something that really impacted our family. And like I said, it all boiled down to a lack of appropriate training.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the problem too is the the salaries that these staff are being paid. They're not being paid a lot.
Yeah.
You know, they're barely being paid a little bit above minimum wage. So that incentive to want to come into work and learn and train and to gain an education in autism,
Yeah.
that incentive and motivation isn't really there. A lot of these individuals that work in these programs just kind of see it as a paycheck. And we had some friends who were familiar with the program, and they kind of confirmed what we believed, that the staff would come in and just kind of everybody would sit around during the day. There wasn't a lot of activities for these individuals to do. There would be, they would color or put a puzzle together, and it wasn't anything that was rigorous or challenging. And for someone like Rob, who had been, my mom homeschooled him, and he was in some very strictly scheduled programmed days. He was always doing something, always getting up, going out, had different activities every hour, did something new. So to go from that type of structured environment to something that was so unstructured and with such a large amount of downtime, it just wasn't great, and it didn't end well for us. So we've kind of been trying to come back from that. That was about 11 years ago,
Oh,
this
wow.
month. Yeah. So it's been a long process, but we are on the up and up,
Mm-hmm.
and we're trying to figure out, what our next steps are for Rob, and if there are any more appropriately designed
Yeah.
programs that we can find for him.
Yeah. So I also was just wanted to follow up with how old is Rob?
Rob he just turned 34
Okay.
last August.
Okay. My gosh. Yeah, thank you again for sharing
Mm-hmm.
that story. I mean, it's
Yeah, absolutely.
tough to share, I'm sure. And yeah, I mean, it's so heartbreaking.
It is,
Never,
but I think it's important. It's important for people to hear that these things happen. And unfortunately, I know Rob is not the only one who has experienced something like this.
right?
Um, so it's I think, like I said, it's important for people to know, to pay attention to changes in behavior, because that was something we noticed with Rob too. He was going to this day program for a while, and then all of a sudden he asked to like stop riding the bus and stopped kind of wanting to go to school. And we don't know if anything was happening at during the day program itself, but clearly he could tell that he didn't like being there anymore, and he didn't want to go anymore. um and unfortunately, he couldn't really tell us why or what was
Yeah.
going on. But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, especially in thinking about like our other guys that are also not able to tell us like what happens during the course of the day. Um, I also
Mm-hmm.
think about that with my brothers too, because I think it's been a year as of today or as of this month that they've been attending their day program. And it sounds exactly like the day program Rob attended 11 years
Ugh.
ago. And yeah, it's just a lot of, we do ask them what they, every day we get that they did a puzzle and that Tanner drew something. So
Mm-hmm.
nothing else further from that. And it just feels so unstructured. And every day I think my mom has like that first like protective pull of like, I just want, maybe they should just be home all the time. Like they just, yeah, such a tough
Right.
place to be.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's something that we just need to all think. I'm hoping to like delve into day programming a little bit more in the future and get the word out there more so about like the requirements for training, the requirements for setting one up, because I think a lot of parents do have questions about what that looks like but are just not sure, you know, just like this whole Medicaid business.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't know. You find a program that is for autistic adults, and you think, oh great, they know what they're doing.
Right.
And it's, that's not necessarily the case.
No,
you know
whole
so yeah,
area
you're right.
this whole area is mostly unregulated. I mean, it's regulated to an extent where they need to follow certain state regulations for like having groups of people with a wide range of disabilities in one room. But beyond that, no, like you said, they're not getting paid to the extent to show that they have this training and this background. Like it does require a certain amount of a certain person to really be able to be successful in that position. I think they should be paid really well for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that really gets me with the day programming, just to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent,
Yeah,
is that we see these individuals aging out of high school around 20, 21, 22, and then what, the learning for them is supposed to stop, and they're just supposed to go hang out in a room and color and engage in leisure activities. It's like, can you imagine if the world was full of us with our like 22-year-old minds?
I know.
You know what I mean? Like we were in college, we went to graduate school, like just to think that it's acceptable for the education and the learning to stop for these individuals just because they have autism is mind blowing. So that's a whole nother thing I could have a whole podcast talking about that.
No, I'll have to have you back on and talk about that. For sure. Because are they supposed to be attending this particular programming for like the next 30 to 40 years of their life and just have no engagement? Like, it's frustrating.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah. It's very frustrating.
Oh my gosh. But then thinking, kind of shifting towards like things that are going on today, something or really new is that Rob is attending like an art class with you weekly, right?
Yes, he is.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that because that seems like it's really motivating and exciting for him.
Yeah, so I was able to, through my yoga teacher, who is a part-time artist at the studio, she connected me with Vartan, who is the executive director of this studio in Utica, New York. And they provide classes and services for individuals with disabilities and individuals on the spectrum. So we took him to go on a tour of the studio at the very end of December. Okay. And we're like, we're not sure. We'll kind of see how he does. He engages in a lot of ritualistic behavior. So if items are kind of out or doors are open, he'll kind of want to put things away and shut all the doors and close the drawers. So we weren't sure how it was going to go, but he walked in and you could tell he kind of was a little nervous. But he took it all in and he responded so well to his art teacher, and he listened and did a couple little activities, and we're like, okay, let's try this out. It's one of the very few things I've been able to find in the area for him to do. So he started going the beginning of this month. He's gone now, I think 3 official art classes, and he is doing so well and he loves it. He calls the art studio. He says that the art studio is on Sesame Street.
Oh my God.
Because you have to walk down like a little alley, and it's a brick building, and there's green lettering on the door of the studio with the studio's name. So he'll talk about art class on Sesame Street, and it's so adorable.
I love it.
But yeah, he loves it. Yeah.
That is awesome. And that's like also really bringing in his interests too, because he likes to draw and he's into different types of media.
Yeah, he loves, my mom has always engaged him in a lot of like arts and crafts growing up. So he loves coloring. He used to love playing with Play-Doh, all of those type of like tactile activities. He's not a big fan of being dirty though. Okay. So that was one of my biggest concerns. I was like, oh my God, he's going to sit down with clay and he's going to have clay all over his hands. Like, how is he going to handle this?
Yeah.
But so far, so good. Every once in a while, he'll kind of give us a little look like, oh my God, my hands are so dirty. But he'll move on. And his art teacher is great about showing him that his hands are dirty too, and reminding him that he can wash his hands at the end. So we're, working on tolerating not always having clean hands.
Yes.
But yeah, like I said, it seems to be something that he's taken to. So we're going to keep rolling with it and see how he does.
Oh man, I love it. Oh gosh, I'll have to put that on my list too. I wonder if I have that I have a blog post of just like activities to consider to try.
Oh my gosh, yeah, definitely put that on your list.
Yeah, and definitely for my brothers to try too. We have to look for what's in the area too, because we were talking before this too that our brothers are a lot alike. Like they would have the best of times together, just hanging out with
Oh my gosh, right.
their videos.
Hanging out on the
Yeah.
pottery wheel, making their clay pots. Yeah, I can see it.
Yes, totally can too. Oh man, they could start their own studio. It'd be so fun. And and Tanner could draw his Disney characters on them. Oh man, he's definitely
Oh my
like,
gosh, yes.
yeah, he is definitely someone that my mom is like, he would totally love getting into that stuff. He's also a little bit worried about getting dirty too, because he's always the first to tell us
Mhm.
if his shirt got dirty and he needs to change it. But I could see, but Tyler really loved arts and crafts and Play-Doh when he's younger. He's just like not outwardly seeking arts and crafts all the time. Like Tanner's always drawing, but Tyler, I think he would really benefit from something structured like that. He'd love it.
Yeah, and that's kind of Rob too. He doesn't actively seek out, art and drawing. He'll want to like write lists and make lists with markers. But in terms of like drawing and Play-Doh, he kind of has amused us in the past, and he'll sit there and play with it. But yeah, like I said, it's nothing he actively seeks out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something he seems to really enjoy. So yeah, I highly recommend for your brothers.
Put that on the list. And then speaking of like things that you've tried, what are some common resources or tools that you've turned to or you would recommend others to use? Just kind of like if you have so many roles like that you're occupying. So whatever comes to mind for you as like an autism sibling, a caregiver, a behavior analyst, or maybe combining all of them.
Yeah. So one of my kind of biggest things is a lot of there's a lot of misinformation out there when
Mm.
it comes to autism and autism treatments and things like that. So one of my favorite resources is the Association for Science in Autism Treatment.
Okay.
It's asatonline.org, asatonline.org.
Yeah.
And it's a website that you can go on and you can search if you're interested in the science behind, some of the diet protocols, or if you're interested in the science between some type of therapy you've heard. You can get on there and search, and it'll tell you whether or not there is evidence behind it. It's run primarily by behavior analysts.
Oh, okay.
So it's an excellent resource. Like I said, if you're looking for peer-reviewed evidence-based research, definitely highly recommend that.
That's great.
And then in terms of personal as like an autism sibling, I just love the social media community online. I think that whatever your social media outlet of choice is, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, um, I think it's important to get on there because you can feel so connected. Like we talked about, like I feel like we are such close friends, and I could talk to you about anything autism related and ask you questions, and we can relate our brothers. Um,
Yes.
and that's hard to find in IRL, right? It's hard to find in real life. Um, you know, it's
Yeah.
it can be tough to find local groups and local communities like that. But I think the power of social media is important. And like I said, feeling that connection and not feeling isolated and not feeling like you're the only one. Because
Mhm.
that was something I think growing up as a sibling of someone on the spectrum. Nobody else in my high school had an autistic brother or sister.
Yeah.
Nobody else really had a sibling with a disability. And it wasn't something that really impacted me significantly, but it was something that I always was in the back of my mind,
Yeah.
like, oh, they can't really relate to like what my brother does. And having friends be like, what do you mean your brother does? It's a little different. So to find that community and be part of it online, it's nice. Like I said, it kind of makes you feel like you have this online family that's there to support you and can understand what you're going through. So highly recommend getting into the online autism world.
Amazing. I love that. Right. And then shifting towards like our last bit of questions, what are some things you're excited about and looking forward to in the coming months?
I I know we just kind of talked about it, but I am so excited for Rob to continue going to these art classes. I had a conversation with his art teacher at the end of his last class, and his art teacher Vartan said that he could already see Robert kind of gaining independence in the studio and eventually reaching a point where he can come in and work on projects on his own and not require such hands-on help. And you can see Rob has already picked up on some techniques already, and is gaining skills and picking them up, and he's only gone 3 times. So I'm really excited to see how independent Rob is going to be able to be in this art studio, and I can't wait to see what kind of projects he keeps making. He keeps making these little clay pots, and they're so cute, and it's something that he seems to like. And next week we're going to try his hand at painting with some acrylic paints, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm so excited to follow along too. See what he does. Oh man. And then how can people listening to this episode get in touch with you?
Either on Instagram, our handle is at autism_IRL, or you can email me at autism_IRL@gmail.com.
Cool.
Either one of those are great outlets to get in touch with.
Perfect. Thank you so much again for being on the podcast today, Dana.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to talk to you.
You too. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode, and a huge thank you again to Dana for joining us today. Everything that we talked about in this episode will be in the show notes. You can check those out there, and then you can also continue the conversation with us in the Autism Grown Up community. You can access that at community.autismgrownup.com, and I'll chat with you all there, and I'll talk with you all next week.